On Mondays, we tap the wisdom and experience of Robert Craddock. Hello to you, Crash.
Gerard, it's great to have you back. And it's a great story, Will Pucovski, isn't it? Well, put it this way, the Century was a great story. It's been a tumultuous ride, hasn't it?
It has, and I don't think we've fully... He gives us enough insight to understand that it is complicated, and that's perhaps the judgments that we normally cast on these things are best held back.
Yeah, it's just so complex. I get the feeling there's probably two people in this world that truly understand what's happening, and that would be his concussion specialist, who revealed that he'd been suffering from sinus issues that were triggering the concussion, and he said he was failing the same part of the concussion test 8 years in a row, and just getting up from a chair he felt dizzy. So that's not how a test batsman can operate, and so. Look, the big question now is where to from here, Gerard, and it's a good question, but I hope they don't rush him, to be honest. He can play out the Shield season now. Maybe I'd love to see him sort of go to England or somewhere like that to just hone his craft a bit. I know he's had difficult times there in the past, but it's just about getting up matches. Like, as you said, only recently he was out of a game with concussion, so there's still a way to go for mine. But here's the good thing. He's sort of in his own age bracket. He's 26 years old, so he's got Cameron Green 2 years one side of him younger, and a gap of 4 years the other side to guys like Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne. So if he comes good, there's a beautiful career for him. Remember, Mike Hussey didn't even start till he was about 30. So I know everyone likes to have snap judgments. Oh, he's ready to go back. Well, after a dozen concussions, you just do not want him suffering from concussion in front of the full view of 1 million people in the Test arena.
Yeah, and the layer in behind that was sort of the illumination that sometimes the concussion symptoms were a mask for something else, for the mental health issues that he's dealing with. And he's not ready to lay all of that out as a young man at the moment. But I thought that was really clear. The difference with the Pucovski case, and this has been true since he was a teenager, is they don't really believe in Bancroft or Renshaw or Harris, but they've always believed in Pucovski if he can get himself right, that he's your Ponting figure for this generation.
Correct. And that's not an issue. No one has ever doubted that Will Pucovski, with a clear head, is Australia's absolute number one choice as the opener of the future. I have to say, before this Century, he actually struggled a bit this season. I think he'd had one score over 39 in his last 12 first-class innings, which for Will Pucovski, that represents a bit of a drought. But he looked terrific on the weekend, and it's there, and you just know that it would be there in the Test arena, and really, he can do it, but I just hope they don't rush him, Gerard. I'd like to see him really see if he can leave this issue behind over a period of not just sort of weeks, but months, and just get into a vein of form where he's got 100, then 50, then another 100. Like, be the batsman that we know he can be in the Shield arena, full of confidence. And maybe when Usman Khawaja retires, that's when I think he's got to be ready, because Steve Smith's anchored in there for the time being as an opening batsman, and the plan is for him to stay there indefinitely. Khawaja won't last much longer, and I just think the thought of Pucovski and Smith opening is a really nice one for Australia.
Yeah, and I think you're right with that as a runway, is play the rest of the Shield season, which Victoria has ambitions towards a Shield final if New South Wales rain, if Sydney's rain holds off today, and then he's signed the deal with Leicester, and beyond that he's going back to play at another English club, so to immerse himself fully in English cricket and play week after week after week, which then leads back to the start of a new Shield season, which we know is front-ended, and just see if for 12 months he can play cricket every game, one after the other, without those issues rearing for him.
But I do love the way he's talking, Gerard, because there was always a sense that, I'm not saying it was psychosomatic, but there was always a sense that when there was a semblance of concussion, like his spirit was really crushed and all the bad memories flooded back. And, of course, that's where the mental health issues kick in. To hear him that's as good as I've heard him sound on the podcast with Adam White. Like, and it seemed to be really genuine. Like, it wasn't hopeful. It was a guy. So let's hope that's the start of good things. And because, as we said, he is in a generation all by himself. Yeah. That there's no emerging batsmen who are trusted in the way he is if he's got a clear head.
There's a lot of thoughts around the Pucovski century, which I'll accumulate and share with you as we go. They are matched by the thoughts around England, who were mauled at the hands of India. 400-plus runs. These games, these test matches have been captivating in all sorts of different ways. We have the partnership with Sports Talk, so it's all been on the SEN app. It's been riveting listening. This started so promisingly for England. They had India 3 for 33 in the first hour of the day's play, and they've ended up getting beaten by 434 runs, a historic loss that came in, for all that might have changed in English cricket, this is the most familiar way to get routed on the subcontinent.
Oh, yeah. And India have worked out, and this is trouble for overseas teams, that the best wickets they can prepare are not the spinning minefields, but the true decks on which their great spinners thrive anyway. Like Jadeja, who, we've said it how many times, the world's most underrated cricketer, just throws down a century and then picks up fifer. But England's spinners were exposed. They just couldn't do anything, and they ran. India were just terrific. But it came down, of course, to Joe Root's outrageously brave and reckless reverse scoop shot off Bumrah, which has, in a nutshell, that summed up the whole Bazball debate. When he was doing it a few months ago, everyone was lauding the adventure of it and the daring do of it. But when they had a chance to really apply some heat to India, when Ravi Ashwin had missed a day's play due to a personal issue, and he played this outrageously reckless shot, Gerard. And I have to say, Jasprit Bumrah has got the second best bowling average in Test history of long-serving bowlers. Like, technically he's better than Dennis Lilly. Would you reverse scoop Dennis Lilly? Would you reverse scoop Malcolm Marshall? So it wasn't the shot for the day. And I'll put two theories to you, Gerard. Yep. Okay, you pick one. Joe Root's shot was the shot of a guy who has fully embedded himself in this Bazball theory, and he's a great team man. He's doing it for the team. That's theory A. Theory B is Root is the captain who was almost embarrassed by Bazball because he captained him before, and they're just doing all these things that he didn't do, and he's been shown up. So he said, all right, if you want us to play like this, I'll just swing away. So I can't work out whether it's theory A or theory B. I think it's the first one. I think he's a good team man, but that was just beyond the pale. It was.
So this is almost the referendum on Bazball in a singular moment. In that crash is the very delusion of Bazball, to see the world as you want it to be and not as it is throughout Joe Root's career, when he's found a shot that has failed him, when he's repeatedly got out in a manner, he would have shelved it. So he can make runs in any way that he wants. As Stokes's point is actually, he's making the polar opposite point. As Root can make runs any way he chooses and has done through judicious shot making throughout his career, and now he's gone headfirst into the pool of Bazball, and he's drowning on the reverse scoop, which he's suddenly addicted to and won't put back in the bag because of the cult-like element to it that will just crash through no matter how often we crash.
And here's the thing. Joe and the reverse sweep have an unusual relationship. When he's playing well, it just ticks over and it's outrageously good. When he's playing badly, it gets him out. And he's played modestly in this series, and your timing with that sort of shot has just got to be honey sweet and superb, and he's not timing the ball that well at the moment, so it got him out. But look, Root pre-Bazball was averaging 49, I think, and he's averaging just over 50 at a strike rate of 70 with Bazball, so you could say it's working, but he also has been relieved of the captaincy burden, so that would help him as well. But the thing is, Bazball cannot make you a great team if you don't occasionally find a second and third gear in your play. You just can't blast a team like India out of the water. I enjoy Bazball, Gerard. I really like it. And as I've said to you so many times, when Ben Duckett and Zach Crawley are opening the batting, whatever I'm doing in life, I stop it. And I go to the television and I watch, and this little Ben Duckett, who never lets the ball go, breaks every rule in the book for opening batting. He just goes biff, bang, whack, and he's great to watch. But they had him, and it was just time to play really sort of dig your toes in cricket, as in, you boys, you're down a player, it's a flat deck. Hi, my name's Joe Root, and I'm batting throughout the first session, and I don't care whether I scored 20 because I'm tiring you out. And he gave them a wicket, and I do get it. But I love the debate on it that Bazball causes. Here's one example. Shield Berry, the world's most experienced cricket writer who's seen 250 tests, said it was the dumbest shot in the history of the game. Piers Morgan, the outspoken commentator, challenges that and goes back and gets a column that Shield wrote 8 months ago saying that Root provided the most breathtaking entertainment he's ever seen with this reverse scoop. And he put the column side by side on Twitter. And in some ways that summed up the debate. Like, you've got to take Root for what he is. You can't, there's not two versions of him. Like, he's playing this game. So if you love it, but there's going to be bumps along the way. But I just feel, Gerard, that I like what Bazball's doing, but without a second gear in tests against India, away, you cannot beat them. And here's the sad thing for England. This is a 5-test series, which I always reckon's no test series in India should ever be 5 tests. It's too hard for the visiting teams. 5 tests. They're barely halfway through it. They've got 2 more tests to go. This could be a 4-1 loss.
Yes, so that's the risk for them, is that it all spins out of control, as it were, from here. Is their mentality is if there's any side that can just shake that off and steady up, it will be this England side. There's the spectacle of Bazball is a bit different to sort of the cultish elements of it. So the cultish elements of it was Duckett's comments that Jacewell's innings owed to Bazball, as if nobody had ever played proactive cricket full of magnificent shot-making before England decided to do this 2 years ago. And I think that's where the blowback and the resentment comes from, is that's just patently ludicrous, is all they can see is themselves and the religion that they've imposed on everybody else. The delusional aspect of that I find absolutely staggering.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, Jacewell's been playing that way since he was a kid.
Yes.
In first-class cricket, he averages an extraordinary 77 at a strike rate of about that. And that career which started before Bazball. But I've got to say, Gerard, I really do believe Jacewell is the best story in world sport at the moment. I mean, we luxuriated at Shamar Joseph, didn't we? Rags to riches. But this, for a young kid, think of it. Just anyone who's listening to this show and you've got a 12-year-old kid, imagine this. He's grade 6 at school. He leaves you. You're living in Victorian country. He leaves you. He goes and sets up base on the Tan or somewhere, builds a tent there and plays just cricket with his mates for 2 years. Lives in darkness in a tent at Mumbai, which he did, and just next to the groundsman's hut. And I've been to those Maidans, Gerard, where they play. They're overlapping fields. They play as many games as they can. By day, they're fine. They're quite welcoming. By night, they're dark. And this young boy for 2 years lived in a tent without electricity or any form of, like there was nothing there, no running water. I'm not sure what happened to how he got through, but he did. Picked up by a local coach and coached to greatness. I mean, he has a hunger that I don't believe, Gerard, any Australian boy could ever have, because no one in our society could ever been through what Jacewell's been through. You know what I mean? He has steel pellets in his soul. Yeah. 2 double centuries in a row. I mean, 50's not enough for him. 100's not enough for him. 150's not enough. And when he was going through, Gerard, and I was talking to Bharat Sundaresan about this, if you're playing junior cricket in Mumbai, 250 does not get you in the paper. 300 might, 400 will. Yes. So these kids just have bottom bottomless determination. It is an extraordinary story. Did the kid go to school? I don't think... We're not sure that he did. You know, there's a school in Mumbai for cricketers that Rohit Sharma went to, and they just drift in, drift out. I'm not sure whether he was taught to read, write, arithmetic. It was just cricket Monday to Friday.
And he'll be here at the top of the order later on this year. It's what an arrival as an international player it's been.
Oh, Gerard, it's stunning. And you think of this. Okay, so he's gone from selling these little fried treats in the street to help to earn a little bit of pocket money. It might have been $1 at a time. Who knows? Up through his teens, barely going to school. And this is the kid who's just scored a double century against England, by the way, Jaiswal. And then suddenly he gets in the Indian under-19s and they really like him. And so he lands an IPL contract of $500,000. And I just thought, imagine that, Gerard. You've survived on bread and dripping for 7 years, then you sign a contract and you haven't even got a bank account, but you get paid $500,000. And I just thought, however much we find out about this young boy, Jaiswal, is not enough. He is one of the greatest sports stories of... I'm going on, aren't I? But I just think it's fantastic.
It's a beautiful depiction of it. As you would imagine, as this is one of the sliding scales in women's cricket, is other nations have to be exposed to Test cricket, and Australia will need to do its part there. So Australia have been forerunners, India and England, and the rest need the exposure. That's what happened at the WACA. It's a Test match memorable for Elisa Healy's 99 and Annabelle Sutherland's double century crash. So it certainly had some signature moments.
Oh, look, it really did. And James Sutherland, of course, father of Annabelle, did so well coaching his kids, didn't he?
Yes.
Will and Annabelle. And as busy as he was as a CA chief executive, he always coached a junior team there along the way. And I think him and Heidi have done they're both really good kids. And if you had to make a prediction, Gerard, what about this? I'd say sometime in the next 6 years that Annabelle and Will Sutherland will have a week where they're both captaining Australian white ball teams. Oh. I reckon I'll put that one down and we'll just keep the tape of that. Like most of my predictions, it'll probably go up in smoke. But I just think, Will's doing a good job with Victoria. Annabelle's just got that look about her that she's a strong, long-serving player with that same instincts about the game. And both, it's to me, it's not really an outrageous prediction. I think good leaders are hard to find. People don't cover the leadership of Australia like they used to because you're subjected to the forces of social media. I've had players in the Test team say, mate, I just wouldn't want it. Just let me bat, please. I don't want the scrutiny. So you've got the Sutherland kids are really got good heads on their shoulders. And I think that could happen within 6 years, that there'll be 2 white ball games in Australia and the Sutherlands might be leading their country.
What an amazing legacy to leave, is to be the leader of the organisation for near on 20 years and then to provide 2 national players in the aftermath.
We'll put it this way. If you're on a bookie stand now and you were framing odds of it, I'd have it no worse than even money, honestly. Yep. I think, just have a look at the ages of them and their potential. And I'm not saying tests for Will. I'm saying white ball. But there's some chance he mightn't even get there. We've said how hard it is for bowling all-rounders to get into teams but that's mainly tests, he's a good young player.
Australia in New Zealand, it starts Wednesday with the first of the T20s. Next Monday, we'll talk the Test series, which begins the following Thursday. So just from the white ball perspective, what are we looking forward to here?
Oh, well, we're looking forward to just getting a feel of the conditions. And I think there's no doubt that New Zealand have been talking about this looming Test series, Gerard, for a long time and prioritising it far higher than Australia has. And as we said, it's just this haunting statistic that hangs over everything New Zealand progress they make in the game. 1 win out of their last 31 tests against Australia. It is staggering.
Yeah.
It defies rhyme and reason, doesn't it? The whole thing. And I just think that the other thing is too, I believe it's a really defining Test series for Kane Williamson. is a great batsman. I get it. But his record against Australia, I think he averages 41, and it's 37 against India and about the same against England. So he hasn't torn the top nations to shreds, Gerard, by any stretch. And that is how you're judged. As Peter Roebuck used to say, when you're comparing the great batsmen, when you're comparing mediocre players, you look at their highlights. When you're comparing the best, you look at what they didn't do. And he hasn't torn Australia apart, or England or India to any major degree. So, yeah, big series for him.
I've got Robert Craddock with me. The sad passing in cricket circles, Crash, was Mike Procter, who's been so well remembered for his playing days, which were interrupted but spectacular nonetheless, and then his role with cricket officialdom thereafter.
Oh, yeah. So, and played 7 tests all against Australia and took 41 wickets at 15 with these really enchanting fast medium pace where he appeared to bowl off the wrong leg and got this massive hooping in-swing, Gerard, which tormented left-handers. Kepler Vessel said you just felt you were facing a bloke bowling with a soap sud. It just sort of drifted away to slip. But I had to do it yesterday. Do you know, Alan Border never gushes about rival players, but for 40 years he's had this thing where he loves Mike Procter. He was 21 years old when he played league cricket in Gloucester, Alan Border, and Mike was there, Gloucester's senior professional. He went and saw him, and just the sight of this guy bounding him with his blonde hair, sort of really robust sort of guy. Border loved him ever since. Got him out here for his testimonial match. And sure enough, and I love hearing, do you know how it's great hearing heroes talk about their heroes, Gerard? You know, the absolute elite, when you get Wayne Carey on talking about who's the best or those guys, Lee Matthews. And so AB on the phone yesterday, I taped it and I listened to it twice. It was so good. Like he said, mate, he had everything. He would have been better than both of them. He said the swinging ball, pace, that love of a good fight off the field, liked a quiet drink and a bet and a real natural leader. And but he grew up in the apartheid era, and there was a lovely story when he got off the plane in South Africa in under-19s in London. He sat next to Barry Richards, who he'd grown up with in Durban. The great Barry Richards lived one suburb away in Durban, and they saw a white man sweeping the streets. Normally in South Africa, that would be a black man in apartheid. And he nudged Barry and said, "What's going on here? Is everything right in our civilised world at home, do you think?" And that was the first time he realised what, got him thinking about the wider world. And he became a great man. He loved women's cricket by the end of his life, but he had a heart operation recently and didn't recover. But then, of course, Gerard, there was the Monkeygate affair when he was the match referee.
Yeah. Yep, and that's the bitter aftermath of that still lives in many a heart right now. So Mike Procter, well remembered there by Robert Craddock. Crash, where would you say things are with the Brisbane Olympics at the moment, with the pause for the Lord Mayor's report, essentially the declaration that the rebuild of the Gabba is dead, and then it looks like the way to salvage it, and one of the salvage missions is around staging an opening ceremony around the regional areas, which you go, hello, Melbourne, this is how we mucked up the Commonwealth Games idea. Just give me the local feel for where things are with the Olympics.
They're in a real crisis point, Gerard, because here's the thing. The renovation of the Gabba got up towards $3 billion. Now, $1 billion is 1,000 million. Imagine 1,000 million little bags, all right? And then multiply that by 3. So youth crime is running rampant up here. So people are really against the Gabba. It's an election year in Queensland. Both parties know that the Gabba's political poison. It can't happen. Now they're looking at Suncorp Stadium, a rectangular ground for the opening ceremony. I don't like it at all. It's a rugby league ground. I just have this image of someone from Germany, Thailand or Austria walking past the statue of Wally Lewis out the front going, who's that? Yep. What's his name? Wally. And fair enough too. And they're also saying, let's redevelop where the Commonwealth Games held the athletics in 1982 and leave that as a legacy. So it would be 50 years later, you're using the same athletics ground at QE2 for the Olympics. I don't like that. They say leave that as a legacy, but I say this, Gerard, for who? Like what, if you're saying you're leaving it for local athletics, they're fine where they are. They don't need 1 cent spent on it. It's a small sport. So it's a state of confusion at the moment. And I am worried about it, and I'll tell you why. Because as I've said this to you before, but it is the truth, when you're a city the size of Brisbane, the Olympics defines you. The Paris Olympics won't define Paris because it's got a million things about Paris that define it. The Olympics will just whiz through there in a few months' time and that'll be it. But Brisbane is Helsinki. Brisbane is Atlanta. Brisbane is Montreal. Say the city, then you say Olympics after it. So that's what worries me. I am concerned. For the first time ever, Gerard, I'm worried that Brisbane can do the Olympics justice, and I say that quite openly. And if you said what's something that makes you feel optimistic, it's that normally cities get 7 years notice. Brisbane had 10, and we haven't even reached 7 years yet. So they're still playing with the casino's chips at the moment. Yeah. But it'll get very serious very quickly. Your thoughts?
It's felt like buyer's remorse, Crash. It's felt like buyer's remorse almost from the moment that the contracts were signed. There's been but how are we going to do this? And as prices have risen, I am having, with recent experience at Olympics, good and bad. So Rio, the Olympics should never have been in Rio. That was a terrible betrayal of the people of Brazil. The country was broke and all this money had been spent on the IOC demands. But in cities like Beijing and London, the cities had never been better. I am now of the view that there's only 6 or 8 cities in the world that should host Olympic Games where it's not the burden, where they're not held over a barrel to spend money on potential white elephant venues and the likes, and that it should be rotated through there. And I do think our city in Australia is either Melbourne or Sydney. And I think it's a reach for a city like Brisbane now and the equivalent cities around the world. And I've seen firsthand when it goes wrong and it's sort of morally reprehensible that the games were in Rio. So yeah, I worry. It doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, it's just, and I think, and also I think there'll be a change of government coming up in a few months in Queensland. Now that unsettles things. It may end up being a good thing eventually, but suddenly it's someone else's problem and they've got to get familiar with it. So it is a real challenge for Brisbane because almost since they signed on the dotted line, Gerard, building costs just about doubled. Yeah. I mean, you do a renovation anywhere in Australia now and you're paying 70% more than you were 5 years ago. So it's a challenge. But having said that, I always remember Beijing was going to be ruined by smog. Athens was going to be ruined because the venues wouldn't be ready. And I must admit, when the gang arrived there, they could still smell the paint.
Yes.
There was that. Sydney was going to have traffic problems, and there was all sorts of. Rio was going to have crime issues, and they sort of got there. And these problems, I'm not saying they evaporated, but they were less than what people thought. Every games needs a drama.
Yes.
So and this will have plenty. I think it'll get there, but by no means can anyone afford to smoke their pipe at the moment because I tell you what, it's all hands on the wheel because there's so much heavy lifting to do. I mean, I'm looking at all the venues like Victoria Park, sailing, equestrian. I'm standing here now, 200 metres from me is the equestrian ground, the showgrounds where Sir Donald Bradman made his test debut. Man, oh man, doesn't that need a lick of paint?
Yeah. And that's the other trouble in all of this is the Gabba desperately needs an uplift. And if it does get left out, I know you wrote the piece, it's going to be fifth in line for Test cricket, where it leaves footy as well. Whether it was the rebuild or the refurbishment, the Gabba, it's a tired venue.
100%. I've got it categorically number 5 at the moment. And let's look forward. If it misses this renovation, well, there's till 2032, that's 8 years nothing happens. And then I tell you what, money will be as scarce as hen's teeth for renovations in the 5 years after the Gabba. So I reckon the Gabba stays how it is for the next 20 years. That's a worry because, look, OK, Optus Stadium in Perth may not get the great crowds, but you can't bag the government for non-investment. Gosh, they put up this massive thing and they will be hard to beat. They're direct rivals with Brisbane. Brisbane's other direct rival, Adelaide, is the best cricket ground in Australia. I really do believe that. So they're a level above Brisbane. So it's It's challenging times, Gerard, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it just because I'm from Brisbane. Brisbane has got to get its act in order.
And a salute to Pete Lalor, who's finished his 20-year innings as the chief cricket writer for the Australian. He's not going to be lost to the crafts, but it's a big hole in newspapers, Crash.
Oh, yeah. Look, he's still on SEN, and I love Pete's radio commentary, but very emotional day for us when Pete finished. I went on his first tour in 2004, and he's a year to India, and he's a year younger than me, but I felt he was 20 years younger than me. He was so enthusiastic. And, Gerard, I'll just say this. In cricket writing, there's two sorts. There's great writers and great news hounds, and they barely ever go together. If you're a great writer, you're more concerned about words and that. If you're a great news hound, you prefer your phone. He was both. I mean, even this year, in his last year, get the call, oh, mate, bit of news for you. Usman Khawaja is having a peace protest. He's got something on his bat. Pete Lalor exclusive, one of the stories of the season. Late in the season, just when you think Peter might have been resting up, got the call. Mate, just to let you know, David Warner's lost his baggy green. Yes. Big stories, Yep. He would just bob up with these stories. What's your thoughts on Pete, Joe? Because he's so disarming that I always reckon players told him far more than they intended to, because he's such a nice guy, He's a great journo.
He's a beautiful man, and he's the best I've travelled with. He's such a good companion to be on the road with, and he's shown me a lot in South Africa and India, where I might be a little bit conservative in those moments. He'd take me out to see the local sites. We've got any number of photos in restaurants that I never would have even thought to go through. So he's a beautiful man to travel with as well. So he's going to join me as the week unfolds. Crash, lovely. What a good Monday. Gosh, there's a lot around, and next week we'll be in the countdown to the New Zealand Test match.
And just quickly, Gerard, I had to ask you, what sort of presence did the Rugby League launch of the season have in Las Vegas? Was it everywhere or nowhere?
Nowhere, but I know they had a lot booked for the immediate aftermath. So I think it would be very visible now to ride on the back of that. We'll talk about that next week as well.
Can't wait. Thanks, Gerard.
Robert Craddock.